Don't worry first and foremost about the fact that you have a law degree. Focus and really get to the heart of what you really want, the person you want to be and what you really want to achieve with your life and your time, and then see how your law degree can fit into that.
Welcome to the You Are Lawyer podcast. Daniel Hennessy, how are you today?
I'm doing really well.
So, Daniel, you and I were just chatting about you being in Texas. We were talking about a couple things with like your travels, and you said you studied in Rome. Would you tell the audience a little bit about yourself?
Well, let's start from where I'm at now and work backwards. I'm currently the father of 3 little boys. We've got a almost 6-year-old, a 4-year-old, and an almost 2-year-old. They keep us very busy. I am married to a beautiful woman. We got married in 2019. I started law school in 2020. And so now I am a practicing attorney, but in-house with a real estate developer. So I'm very grateful that I don't have to do the crazy hours, right? My company allows me to be very flexible, which is great for my family because that's what both myself and my wife really wanted at this stage in our lives. And we really wanted to be in a position where our careers enabled us to focus on our family. And so I'm very blessed to have that. The company I work for now is called Garfield Public Private, and I'm part of the legal team. There's 2 of us, and we do developments, so commercial real estate developments. Usually our client is a municipality. So we work a lot with what you would call like 2nd or 3rd tier cities, meaning cities that could be as small as 10,000 inhabitant population, but usually it's around 80 to 100,000. Some of the recent ones we've worked with, Abilene, Texas is a great example. Irving, which is suburb of Dallas, right? Kind of right in between Dallas and Fort Worth. So that kind of city, right? And what we do is we help those cities develop and deliver infrastructure that is focused on economic development for the city, right? So when one of those cities wants a convention center or a convention center hotel or a performing arts center or anything associated with that, parking structure, we're not really limited in what we can do. But the hotels and the convention centers and the performing arts centers are what we like to focus on first, because those kinds of developments require a very specific kind of expertise and set of connections with a lot of different parties, right? And because, cities aren't usually in the business of getting that kind of complex infrastructure set up and running and operating, we guide them through the entire process and help them with the negotiations of all the different parties and all of that. So it's very interesting. It's something new every day. There's a little bit of politics involved. There's a lot of economics involved. There's a lot of finance. There's some real estate stuff that always is in play. And then there's all the interesting things of construction and the operations, right, of working with the brands that are going to brand and operate these facilities. So it's a lot of variation, it keeps it very interesting. So that's what I'm doing right now.
So with Garfield, do they only work with municipalities within Texas or nationwide?
Nationwide. We currently have a project working with the city of Jefferson, Missouri. We recently are just launching into a project with the city of Springfield, Illinois. Trying to think what other ones are going on outside of Texas. I mean, we love Texas. Texas is great because it's closer, right? It's less travel. But yeah, we'll go anywhere in the country.
Okay, cool. And then I asked that question because I went to law school in Louisiana. I went to Southern University in Baton Rouge. And so I'm really familiar with Texas law and oil and gas rights and stuff. So I was curious if you had to know all of that or if you had to, okay.
We don't, I don't have to do too much with oil and gas stuff. That's funny you asked that though, because one of the things that happened that's been very interesting recently is we got involved with a solar generation project. Because of the project we had done for Abilene, Texas, and because of the relationship of trust that we had built up, they had some property outside of their incorporated territory that they had leased for agricultural use, and they were looking for ways to increase their rents on that. And somebody had talked to them about how they could, get a higher rent if they were put a solar project on it. So even though we had never done a renewable energy project, they trusted us to look out for their best interests, and they asked us if we could do it. So we did a little homework and figured out that we probably could. So we've been doing that for the last few years, working on that. We'll see if we can get that wrapped up this next year. But that was a whole new thing, right? And it all came from having that relationship of trust with the city.
Yeah. That's a really interesting kind of niche that you're in. Real estate is prevalent everywhere, but real estate in smaller cities, right? Like I'm in Columbus, Ohio, and I'm like, oh my gosh, we've had the Greater Columbus Convention Center decades. So
Yeah.
to think about what that would have been like when it first opened up and how big you start and how it scales, that's pretty cool. It's interesting.
Yeah. Right. It's a whole universe. And it's all these things you never think about until you think about them. And then you're like, oh, yeah, I guess somebody had to do that. And they had to think about this and they had to figure out that because convention centers are the kind of thing, they're like the field of dreams, right? Nobody's going to come until you build it. And if you build it, they will come if you do it right, right?
If you do it right, if you have parking, if you have infrastructure, if you can handle it.
Yeah, all the
Yeah.
things. You got to market it. You got to market it like crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, cool. So, Daniel, you said a couple things there, but I want to note the time. So, you said you were in law school 2020, and that's the pandemic, right? The world is shutting down.
Yes.
And so, I was married November 2019. What month did you get married?
June of 2019.
Okay, so June 2019, you're married. You're like, yay, I'm a newlywed. I'm married November 2019. Yay, newlywed. The world is closing. I didn't expect this. So that particular time frame, plus having three children and starting your second career.
It was a lot. So our first came along right at the beginning of the pandemic. So in one sense, it was very scary, but in another, so he was born February of 2020. So that's like, at least, around here, everything kind of like shut down and went into lockdown mode about 2 or 3 weeks after he was born. So the great thing about that was that the whole world stopped for us to be at home with our newborn. Nobody was like, how come you're spending all that time at home now with your baby instead of being out doing your thing? Because everybody was at home, right? And we just happened to have a newborn. So that was great. So I got to see, his first everything. I was with our son, Sean is his name, for everything. That was wonderful. Of course, the downside of it was we were always at home. Like everybody else. And that made that first year of law school very weird and challenging. It's funny now that I'm thinking about it. I think for me, because of where I was at in my life, it was not as difficult for me as for some of my colleagues at law school, my fellow law students who were usually younger than I was. I'm not sure I was exactly the oldest in the class, but I was close, right? I was numbered one, two, or three. And so, most of the law students in their 20s, for them, that was a big deal because they're at such a different place and they're building their social network and they're just in their life in general. And I mean, by the time I was in law school, I had lived through a lot. I'd lived overseas, I'd lived in different countries. I lived for a time in Venezuela when the country was going through, complete chaotic political upheaval. And I got to be there when they attempted the coup against Hugo Chavez. And, it's like after you live through that, you live through a lockdown in the state of Texas, and it's kind of like, well, I guess we're going to get through this too, right? At least they're not tear gassing crowds outside my apartment window.
Exactly. You have your family, you have power, you have food, you have
Yeah, right.
tons
Water.
of screens and electricity. Yeah, things could be worse.
Yeah, yeah,
Yes.
exactly.
But I do think that's a really good perspective, right? Because I went to law school at 28, and I do know a lot of people who went straight out of undergrad. And if you just came off undergrad, not only is law school very different, but then to be stuck on online only, yeah, that would change everything. Like That's a really big shift. I kind of think of my sister-in-law. She was a sophomore in high school when COVID started,
Mm-hmm.
and that really impacted
Mm-hmm.
her too. Because it's like, no, I know what being outside is like, and then you have to switch. So yeah, it's a really big shift no matter where you are.
Yeah, for sure. No, and when we were all able to get back on campus, everyone was so much happier.
I'm sure. I mean, law school is. I really enjoyed it, and one of the questions I asked on the survey is, "Would you go to law school again?" I had fun, but I could not imagine doing it online. No way. No way, no how. Because I guess it might have been a little bit easier though, right? Like that imposter syndrome of looking around and waiting to get called on. Like, was that part eliminated because you weren't in person or what?
Great question. It might have even been more pronounced because online you're even more invisible. So you couldn't really tell how the professor was deciding, which part of the room to look at because they were just either looking at a list or looking at a screen, but that the interaction was much less. So it did, in many ways, it did kind of feel like we were all just kind of like hiding in a corner.
So, in your survey, when you were preparing to get on here, you mentioned that you and your spouse, you guys are homeschooling your children. Is that something that came from the pandemic, or are you still doing that, or what?
Yeah, we are. It's kind of like a hybrid program that we have. So Sean is the only one right now in school. But yeah, that's a great question. I don't know if that we necessarily think of it as coming directly from the pandemic, but it stems more from having friends that have done it so successfully, right? And seeing other friends of ours who had got married much earlier in life, and so their kids are, already through high school and into college, and some of them have just like they're just such wonderful people, and we're like, wow, well, like we want our kids to be like that, and not that you can't get that elsewhere, but it just worked. And then that piece together with another big piece is my wife's profession. My wife she's a mental health counselor, so she's a licensed professional counselor, right, an LPC, and she's trained in something that they call play therapy, right? So she's got a lot of training on the emotional development of kids and how they interact and how they develop and how they grow and how they learn. So she was like, well, other people pay me to help their kids with their development. Like, why wouldn't I give what I've learned to my own kids? So that was a huge factor in making that decision, right? Was to give her the opportunity to be able to spend more time, especially the younger years, with our boys, and to give to them what she's worked hard to learn and practice and train. So it's so far so good. It is a lot of work, right? It is a lot of work. It's exhausting. The days that so she still works twice a week, and the days she goes into the office to see clients, she at the end of the day she's energized and upbeat. The days she stays home with the boys, by the evening she is exhausted.
I mean, three kids is a lot. We only have the one, but I've heard that one kid is one, two is 20. So I can't even imagine when you have three. And yeah, we did think about homeschooling just because I love reading and I love learning. And we got to be the Three Musketeers because our daughter was born June 2020. So we were stuck at home, and then I went straight on to maternity leave. So I didn't even get back into the office until October. And by the time I got back, I was like, she's really cool. I want to hang out with her. So
Mm,
then I decided to
so
leave my big
sweet.
law. Yeah, I decided to leave there and just spend time with her. And thankfully, we had a whole nother year because everything, like, there wasn't even the option to put her in daycare. So I was like, great, it's just us. And to be fair, though, that's why we haven't had another. Because I was like, how do you have a kid outside of a pandemic? I don't know. I was like, because even when we look at pictures of her birth, we both have on masks because I had to have a mask on in the delivery. Most people don't do that. Oh, so I no, it's too foreign, too foreign.
Oh my gosh, that's so good. I
Yeah,
mean, I don't know what to say about that.
I know people do it. I know. We'll have to decide. But she's pretty cool. She is. They just had their 100th day of school, so she's in kindergarten right now at 5, and it's good. It's good. I mean, well, they were with us, and whatever you guys were doing is what they're doing.
Uh-huh. That's right.
So, yeah. So, Daniel, let's go back a couple of steps. I know you've been saying that this being a lawyer and practicing a second career for you. What initially interested you in law school? Like, did you grow up with lawyers? Did you know lawyers or what?
Great question. Yes, I did. My dad is a lawyer. So, of course, I grew up. He was an attorney with a law firm down here in Dallas called Hughes and Luce, which went through several iterations. I think its longest it was known as Hughes and Luce, and that's when it became kind of a more recognized Texas law firm. I think they had offices outside of Texas as well. Eventually, they got acquired by K&L Gates, and that was right around the time that he retired from the law firm. And then he came to work for Garfield Public Private, right? So now I get to work with him, and that's been such a great experience. It's kind of part of the Garfield Public Private's ethos, if you will, is the kind of the family connection, right? The chairman of our company is Ray Garfield, and two of his sons are work here in the company. And then my dad has been the general counsel at the company for really since it was organized as Garfield Public Private. And so now I'm with him in the legal department, and my sister also works here as our chief marketing officer. So there's a great family atmosphere here in the company. And we have, it's not just that. We have others included too. But yes, so to go back to your original question, yes. I grew up with my dad as a lawyer, so that was always something that was in the back of my mind. Um, Even though interestingly, all of my uncles, both on my dad's and my mom's sides, were doctors. So now it's kind of funny that I have ended up with a law degree. My brother is a doctor, practices here in Dallas as an orthopedic surgeon. But yeah, that's the way I got into it, especially as a second career, was more indirect because I was in my 40s when I started law school, late 40s. So like that's very much a big change for me. And I was a mature man. I had a lot of life experience by the time I chose to enter law school. So I wasn't so much focused on, oh, I really want to be a lawyer and practice law. What I knew I wanted at that point was I want to do something that's meaningful, but most of all, that I get to work with people I know and trust and enjoy working with. Right. For me, it was really about being with people who I know are good people and who are good at what they do, who are competent and who work well as a team. And so getting the opportunity to work with my own father, who I've always respected and looked up to as a professional. I mean, he was a great attorney in the law firm. He was one of the founding partners of the law firm that he worked in, and he was always well respected in the Dallas legal community. So, I always looked up to him, and then to get the opportunity to work with him was really meaningful for me, and it's been great. It's been so great.
Yeah. What was the decision like when you decided you wanted to go to law school? Were people looking at you like you had lost it? Or were they like, that makes sense? Yeah.
You know what? It was more like, yeah, that makes sense. And probably because I've always been intellectually curious. I've always been liked to read. I've always had a strong sense of justice and fairness. So I don't think anybody was really surprised. They were more like, wow, hey, good luck. That's not that easy.
Yeah. And then
So
did you do an evening program? Did you work full time or did you go to law school full time and have the solid 3 years?
it was so I went to law school full time, and I was working for Garfield at still, but very part time, right? So they were very generous with me to let me be very flexible. I would do a few things. It might have been 10 hours a week that I was doing for the company throughout law school, but it was really law school full time. And then what I did was I was already employed and knew that I was getting the degree so that I could help the company as part of its legal department. I didn't have to go out and do all the recruiting stuff and do the internships and all that most of my fellow law students were doing. So what I did was I did summer school and got extra credits so that I could finish in 2.5 years instead of the full three. So I got to wrap up all my coursework, in the 2.5 years and shave off one semester. Although I did postpone my actual graduation until I got to do it with all my classmates because that was what a great moment, right?
Yeah. Okay. So 2.5 years in law school. Was any of it in person?
Oh yeah.
Okay,
Um,
good.
Really only the first year. So yeah, the second and third years were all in person.
Okay,
Hmm.
cool. What an interesting and unique
Yeah, it
story.
was great.
That's fascinating. Yeah. I've looked back. I mean, 6 years is not a short amount of time, but so much has changed. Like, my husband is still working with the same company he was with, but they have gone 100% remote first. And so there's like no option for him not, like, this is his office where I record, and he just uses this every day. And it's a full on studio, but he's in calls all day because it's 100% virtual. And so, yeah, I think like I look forward to like reading these stories in a couple years. Like, can you believe we went through that? Because even this podcast, my first episode was April 2020, but I started recording in January 2020. And I remember back then Zoom was like $65 a month because people didn't really need it. That was the only thing that was out there. And so even from there to now, technology has changed so much. So it's
So
crazy.
much.
I know, it's wild. Okay. So Daniel, I have one last question for you. You ready?
Yeah.
So I ask this question to every guest that comes on. What would you say to a young lawyer, 5 years practicing or less, or a law student about what they could do with their law degree?
I would say don't worry first and foremost about the fact that you have a law degree. Focus and really get to the heart of what you really want, the person you want to be, and what you really want to achieve with your life and your time, and then see how your law degree can fit into that. Not the other way around, because then at the end of the day, we're all happier when we're doing what we truly love and when we're being the person we know we want to be. And that's worth more than anything, I think. It took me a long time to get to that, right? You see, I've got mostly all my hair's gray and got some wrinkles in my forehead now. And I didn't figure that out as a young man. It took me a lot of decades of a lot of different experiences and listening to a lot of wise people. I know a lot of people figure that out sooner, and that's great. But it's not an easy journey to really get to the heart of who am I and what do I really want to do and what's the impact I want to have on the people I love and the greater community and the world. So I would say, focus on the really important stuff and your law degree will figure itself out.
Yeah. And I think anyone that's listening to this, they might be able to figure out that lesson a little bit sooner because you shared that. So that's good.
Well, I hope so. I would love for that to be the case.
Yeah, absolutely.
So another thing that's really big on that is don't be afraid to make the changes that you need to make, even if they seem really big and scary. Because that was definitely, for me, we didn't really get into this much, but my prior career as a clergyman and working with the Vatican Museum, completely different from the practice of law. When I knew that I needed to make a change, it was so daunting because it's like, well, what are people going to say? And what are people going to think? And what am I going to do? And how am I going to figure it out? And all these things, all these doubts and fears. And So it's hard to make big changes, but if you know you need to make big changes, if it really is going to get you where you want to be, don't be afraid.
Yeah. Yeah, I appreciate you saying that because a lot of times people come on here and they're struggling with making a decision. And I always thought it was just because we're lawyers and we've been trained to like be loyal and stick to the plan. But that might just be a common trait with being alive. It's just hard to make a big shift after you've been doing one thing. So,
Absolutely. Yes. Yes. Right. Because when I was going through that very difficult moment of discerning what are my next steps going to be, I was very blessed to work with an excellent therapist, an excellent spiritual director. And one of the things that my therapist, he would quote this from Mark Twain. I'm not sure if I haven't looked it up to double check the source as a good lawyer would do. But anyway, it sounds good. And it's probably from Mark Twain. And the quote is, we worry so much about what other people think of us, and yet they seldom do.
that's
Right?
good.
Like,
Yeah.
and I think about it in my own life, right? Like, how much do I really think and worry about what other people, the decisions they're making? I mean, I do when they affect me, or if it's somebody I really love and am trying to help, then but otherwise, like, I don't have time for that, right?
It's
I gotta
true.
be thinking about what I could barely take care of myself.
Yes. So, if you have 2 more minutes, can you tell us a little bit about what prompted you to move to Rome and work with the Vatican Museum and those things?
Oh, well, that was because someone knew me. So, and it was such a great opportunity, but it was not something that I really sought out. It was something that the colleague of mine who was in the position prior, he was ready for a change. And when he was thinking about who could replace him, he put my name on the list. And, all the folks who had to make that decision thought that I looked like a good candidate. And I got selected and they asked me if I was willing to do it. I thought it was a joke at first, right? Like, hey, can you move for, I was living in Philadelphia at the time, working in different ministries and work different nonprofits, a lot of education stuff and faith formation stuff. And so for somebody to call you up and say, hey, do you want to move to Rome and work in the Vatican as, the international director for the patrons of the arts in the Vatican Museums? It's like, what are you talking about? What even is that? So, but that's how it happened. I was there just about 2 years. So it was a very intense, a beautiful time. I mean, such a wonderful experience, but it was exhausting for me because it included a lot of international travel and there's a lot of bureaucracy, right? The Vatican is a very, very complex institution with a lot of bureaucratic layers. And um, we got a lot of things done, but it was hard because you got to work through all those, all those layers of bureaucracy. And that was, some people thrive in that. Some people are really good at that. And I was good at some things, but it was just really tiring. So I realized as interesting as this is, and as amazing as the projects that I got to be a part of were, I knew I couldn't stay there long term.
Yeah. It was good for a season.
It was a great season.
Yeah. All right. Very cool. Well, thank you so much.
I hope you keep doing this because you've just got a great demeanor for this.
Thank you. I appreciate it.